Here's one I purchased in September of 2022. I had to buy it because of its unique wood grain pattern. I call this one the Bearded Lady. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. If you've watched my show for any amount of time, you know I like unique wood grain patterns. And a bearded lady within the vintage guitar market usually refers to a guitar with at least a three-piece top, where the top piece is like super heavily flamed, the center piece is obnoxiously plain, and then you have another flamey piece. Now, for any ladies out there with facial hair, please know I'm not making fun of you. It's just a term that I saw talked about on guitar forums, and I use it affectionately because I just find it so funny that they would give this phenomenon such a memorable name. Does anybody else find it funny that most people associate Les Pauls as feminine? I mean, they've got those curves to them, right? But Les Paul, the person, is a guy. I wonder if he ever had mixed feelings about that. But as far as bearded ladies go, this one's relatively tame. Like, from a couple of feet away, you don't even super notice it. But vintage Sunburst and tobacco-era 70s Les Paul Customs just have such a great look to them. And if you're wondering what year this one is, here's a few key details to pick up on. We've got the Kluson Waffleback style tuners, so that'll tell you it's probably before 1975-ish. Same thing with our bone nut. You'll want to check out the bridge. We've got a real ABR1. Just make sure it's actually post-mounted and not just an ABR1 on Nashville studs. Check out your body construction. If you got a line in the center, you know it's a pancake construction. So that tells you it's from 1969 till about 76. Is there some runoff till 79? Sure. But it gets you in the ballpark. You'll also want to check your neck material because that can help tell you what era. Now, there are some exceptions, but usually that says, okay, it's before 1976. This one has an additional tell. It says 20th anniversary. So the Les Paul Custom was first introduced in 1954, so 20 years after that would be 74. However, unlike most anniversaries, the 20th anniversary customs really weren't that special. They used that inlay all the way through about 75, just using up the parts. So the next thing to check would be your serial number. Most times it's not too helpful, but the reason why I have this one is it actually teaches two lessons: cool color and wood grain figuring, and decals. Decal serial numbers were used from 1975 until early 1977. If you have one leading in 99, you know it's a late 1975. If it has 00, it's somewhere in 1976. If it starts 06, you know it's early 77, because in 1977, in the second quarter, they started the year, day production number sequence that we still utilize in a similar format yet today, with some exceptions in 1994 and 2014 through early 2019. You don't see the 99s as often, and a lot of times people will question, hey, what's this big oval around my serial number? Not all the decals have that, but it is a phenomenon that does occasionally occur. Sometimes you'll actually find that on the regular stamp style serial numbers too. So this one's a pretty cut and dry case for a 1975, but occasionally it can get a bit dicey. What you really want to go off of is your pot codes, and we'll do that later on. But if you have a guitar and you need help dating it, I do offer private help sessions on my website for a small fee. So to learn more about this one, let's finally go ahead and throw it on the workbench, get it all cleaned up, and take a look at this interesting 20th anniversary bearded lady. She polished up beautifully. Let's go ahead and check out this 75 Custom. So for your pickups, you should still have T-tops in here, but you're going to notice something. This is the year when they start to transition into this style, the engraved patent number rather than the water slide decal. 75 is pretty much the only year that you'll find them raw like this. They don't have any additional stamping. Sometimes you'll find like Williamsville on it before they start with the date stamps. So this is correct for everything that we know so far about this guitar. And this particular set reads 7.35 k ohms in the bridge, 7.4 in the neck, in the middle for fun, 369. Anywhere between 7.1 and 7.6 is the usual for these. You can see the gold has really been worn off the neck, and it's definitely starting to go away on the bridge, but it gives it some nice character. But now pay special attention to our neck pickup cavity. So you can see it's routed for a long neck tenon, but it's not one. This is what's called a transitional neck tenon. It's like somewhere between a short neck and a long neck. Pretty much by 76, you start to see just all short necks. But in the pancake body era, it's important to note that there's multiple layers. Ever since I learned this like 3 years ago, I make sure to point it out because I always thought the one we see right here is the same one that we see right here in our cavity, but it's not. It's this layer, and then the one we're seeing is actually right underneath the binding. If the pancake body guitar that you have is made within the era with the thin binding in the cutaway, you can actually see that band right underneath the maple top right there. A great one to see that on is in my crazily flamed 20th anniversary Les Paul Custom. But here's another good area to see that. And as far as the bridge pickup cavity, not too much going on here. Just more of the same with the layering of woods. We've already talked about the ABR1 bridge and how it's post-mounted into the body. This is the last year of them doing that on a Les Paul until about 1983-ish, outside of special editions. But here's a look at the bridge itself. It's got some gold wear with Gibson and the patent number on the back. And now being a later 75, this is kind of a transition between the lightweight tailpieces into the more heavy ones. This one currently has a heavy one on it. It's got the correct style casting marks, but I couldn't really say for sure if it had been replaced at one point or not. The wear looks about right as compared to the rest of the gold though. Now we can take a second to appreciate the full top without any pickguard on it. So I was calling this vintage Sunburst earlier. If you don't know the difference between vintage Sunburst and tobacco, tobacco has a brown border whereas vintage is black. Now technically, if you get this in the light just right, it is brown, it just got shot very deep. So it's kind of like a combination of the two finishes. The three-piece top was common. You can even find that in the 50s if you stripped down a gold top, believe it or not. But that's pretty much all you had in the 70s was three-piecers. Sometimes you can find as much as 7, but generally it's 3. I know this looks nice and minty fresh now, but trust me, it was a player's guitar. In this area, you've got some scuffs and picking scratches that I was unsuccessful in polishing out. And then as you run the light over it, you've got a smackerel of dings across the top. Nothing too crazy. The finish definitely steals the show. And as far as our controls over here, we've got the cool witch hat knobs. That's the final year of these guys before they switch into the reflectors for a little bit before we get our speed knobs back. They have golden toppers and are labeled volume, tone, tone. These are your bridge controls. These are your neck. The pickguard itself doesn't have anything too crazy going on with it, but this one was made before any type of weight relief was introduced, so it's a solid mahogany body outside of our banding of sandwiches. And then we can move on to our 3-piece mahogany neck with a true ebony fretboard. Now these frets actually do show some wear. However, it looks way worse than it actually is. But you gotta remember, the early 70s Les Paul Customs have the lower fret wire, and they're a bit skinnier, because it's about 76 when they transition into a slightly wider one. But do not call these fretless wonders. Fretless wonders are skinny and low frets. These are easily at least twice the width of true fretless wonders. But our bone nut measures 1.69 inches, increases to 2.06 by the 12th. My goodness, 0.79 inches first fret neck depth. That's skinny. Then by the 12th, 101. But if you take it at like, say, the 9th, it's 0.98. The mid-70s was all about a skinny nut width that gets a little bit bigger up here, and the neck starts off small and then gets kind of chunky. Not all of them are exactly like this. This really reminds me of like some mid-60s melody makers. It gets quite full and rounded up here. That's a cool profile. Here's a look at that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. It's just a nice rounded C shape, but it gets very full feeling without much shoulder by the 12th. You gotta look closely to notice that. Another unique feature here is pay special attention to your side marker inlays. Kalamazoo like to space them really far apart in this era. Because you got to remember, 75, that's when Nashville is starting to open. They're producing a few guitars, but 76 is like when they really go gung-ho putting stuff out. If you're ever trying to identify a bone nut in this era, because that can help you with determining if it was KZ or Nashville made, look for those small dots within the nut. That's how you know it's a real bone material. If the texture is completely smooth and uniform, that's how you know it's not bone. Stock from this era. Now we can move on to the face of our headstock. Cleaned up beautifully. And all things considered, the lacquer really has not aged too much on this example. Like, it's got a nice light yellowing hue, but nothing excessive. Truss rod cover has some scratches to it and a small crack in our upper ring, but that's common. And here's what the back of that looks like. While I was stringing it up, I thought of one more thing. If you're ever cleaning one of these, be careful with that inlay. If you utilize a steel wool technique to clean off your fretboard, or even a razor blade technique, the letters on here, they wear away very easily. So also keep in mind, just because it doesn't have a 20th anniversary inlay on it, doesn't mean it's not a 74. And if you want to know why 74s are so highly sought after, it's because That's the year commonly associated with Randy Rhoads. His did not have the inlay. So if you want a white Les Paul Custom from that particular year, make sure you look closely at your 15th fret to see if somebody just scraped that away, because you will still be able to vaguely see the outline of the lettering. But now we can flip on over to the backside. We've got a beautiful continuation of our burst, and this is what I like to see. So you gotta remember, this is like the last year before they introduce your grounding base plate. They start to put those shielding tins over top of it. 75, you'll still have a pretty standard looking layout, and you have varying capacitors. These ones are our brown bugs. Pot codes are a great way to tell you how old a guitar is. So you're going to look for one that starts with 137, that tells you it's a CTS pot. Then the next two tell you the year, so 74. Then the last two tell you the week of production, the 57th week. So the very last week of 1974 is the earliest, absolute earliest this guitar could be. Now that said, they didn't generally just get the brand new pots in and put them in. They would sit around for a while. Everything about this serial number tells me we are at least in the back half of 75. So to find an exact date, no, you can't do that in this era. Not until the new serial number comes out. And even then, that date that you can read with the year day system is just when they stamped at the neck. That's not the completion date. But it's the best you've got. But many of these pots are covered over where we need to see it, but all the visible ones are matching. And here's a look at our toggle switch route just for fun. And why not? Let's take a quick peek around the edges. See the plastic output jack plate? That's something that changes next year too. And then somebody's put Schaller strap locks on this one. That's pretty much the only non-original part that I saw. We've got a couple of dings over here. And then the absolute worst thing somebody did. Why? I hate it when people do that. They put another strap button here. I get it, maybe it balances a little bit better, or they wanted to try it. And here's the thing, you've got three options. You can take it out, leave it like this. Yeah, it's a bit of an eyesore, but it doesn't stand out immediately as much as having it installed. Or B, you can have somebody fill that in and do a light lacquer touch-up. The problem is it's never completely invisible unless you refinish the entire thing in a solid finish. And you're better off just choosing one of the first two options on this one, because the strap button has also impressed the finish a little bit, so you'd have to do a larger touch-up than just a drop. I mean, are there guys that can do it nicely? Sure, but perfectly matching that finish, nearly impossible. But it's not like this is a minty condition in the first place. It's got a bunch of buckle worming back here, nicks and dings. So who knows? Maybe that position balances it better and somebody's happy that it's there so they don't have to do it themselves. Moving up the backside of our neck, I was pleased to see no major wear back here. And you've got a couple of light impressions, but I don't feel those, especially now that I've polished the neck. I guess now that I look closer, there's a couple of dings back here. But we've got a beautiful volute back here. And hey, we still have the Kluson waffle back tuners. They're not the best. The problem is you have to tune up like you normally do with a tuner. But if you want to just go back a little bit, no, they become loose. And you have to tune all the way down and then go up. So it forces you to use tuners in the proper way, but it's very common for people to replace those. But there's our serial 99 standing for 1975, and then we just got a number with Les Paul Custom at the top, made in USA. But even if things look good, you should always do the blacklight test just in case. So if you were to do a touch-up, it would look pretty much exactly the same in that area. But everything back here actually glows very evenly and nice. Not even any sweat absorption areas right there. Moving up the backside of the neck, you can see those dings / impressions I was talking about a little bit easier. But thankfully, no breaks, cracks, or repairs. As you go up here, you can see the decal black lights a little bit differently. That's not a big deal. And ooh, yeah, that's a nice even one on the top. I would like to see the mod collection try to do this. Just spray over an existing guitar a transparent green and just call it Blacklight Delight. Oh man, do you know what happened here? It used to be common for stores to tell guys, hey, put clear nail polish over top of your golden hardware because it'll help prevent it from wearing. And somebody must have did that. I was wondering why it had like that oily ring around it when I had polished it. But pickups are not supposed to glow like that, so somebody definitely did the nail polish technique. That's cool. And explains a lot about that particular wear pattern. But everything looks good there. Run up our fretboard. It doesn't really help us much there until we get to our headstock, which is also glowing beautifully ghastly and even. Oh, looks like there's a couple more marks over here on the neck, but thankfully no neck heel separations or anything like that. We don't have any pancake body separations either. But this era is definitely known for their heavy guitars. This one is 9 pounds, 12.6 ounces, which is honestly on the lower end of these. Anything sub 10, you've got yourself a good one. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. So far, it's a really nice kind of mellow rock sound. I found something while demoing this. The output jack's a little bit finicky. Like there's a certain spot where it just doesn't work at all. But if you push it over a bit. So a wire must be grounding it out or something. I'll take a look at that later. But I also noticed our tone pot does not actually work for the neck pickup. So here it is on 10. Okay, now it kind of works, but it sounds strange. I just cleaned out the jack. I think I saw what was the problem. The wire was just too close to this and it just wasn't working out, so. Yep, that issue's gone. But I'm curious about this, if cleaning the pot out helped. What's interesting is like the 0 position, it just doesn't work because it's full right now. But everything else in between there is just fine. So 1. So there we go, the 1975 Bearded Lady Les Paul Custom. What are my final thoughts on it? This is a fun guitar with like a little bit of an additional tail, but as far as early 70s mahogany neck customs go, just know going into them, they have a slightly skinnier nut width, not by a lot, but their neck profiles are just vastly different as compared to a late 70s. So it's not necessarily, hey, one has a maple neck, one has mahogany. There's a lot of other differences to keep in mind, especially the fret wire. Like late 70s, they're a little bit wider, but that makes them a little bit easier to do bends on. But generally speaking, this era, if you're a modern player used to modern fret wire, you're not going to like any of these frets. You'll probably opt to have it refretted. In my opinion, this one still has plenty of life left on these frets, but it also depends if you're used to this era or not. Now, it used to be you would pay a premium for the mahogany neck versions, but guys like Adam Jones have really helped popularize the maple necked Les Paul Custom. So that's not as much the case anymore, but obviously the closer you get to 68, the more and more the prices go up because they're a little bit less common on the market and they get closer to 50 specs. So if you're interested in being the next owner of this one, I think I'm going to put it up for sale. We've got some other guitars I want to move on, and I decided, sadly, this one will be on the chopping block. But all right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.